So Moxley was interviewed by the New York Post, and he had some interesting comments. And I think it kind of weaved from storyline to not storyline, Bully. Does that make sense?
When I read the comments, there was a pretty long thing that Jon had to say. I went back and I read it again because when I read it the first time, I'm thinking in wrestling terms. I'm saying, is he working or is he shooting? And after I went back and read it a second time, I was like, okay, here is on the surface, this is about Moxley and his crew and what's happening in front of the camera. But I think it's more indicative about what's happening backstage within AEW. And I think Moxley's comments point the finger at the person who needs to be held most accountable. So do we want to...
So let's play the audio of the interview between the New York Post and Jon Moxley. So the verbiage he used, Bully, I don't think that was storyline. Now that I actually hear it from him and it's not like I'm reading it, that's why it's always best to hear the whole quote and to hear the whole audio. It sounds like, hey, there was somebody backstage that was saying, you know what, this interview doesn't matter, this segment doesn't matter, it's not a top person anyway, let's move on, or let's not put much attention to it. So, I mean, your thoughts after you actually heard from Jon Moxley.
Let me put this in context. Let's not worry about what the ringmaster has to say. He's at the bottom of the card. Does that help?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine saying that about the ringmaster, who turned out to be Stone Cold Steve Austin. Everybody who's at the top of the card started out at the bottom of the card. Die, Rocky, die. The guy that we spent all show talking about, what he did last year, what he could possibly do at Survivor Series, main event, WrestleMania, blah, 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 all the stuff about The Rock. One of the biggest guys at the top of the card ever started out at the bottom of the card with Die, Rocky, die chants. Everybody starts at the bottom. You need to invest as much time as the bottom of the card, if not more, than you do at the top, because you're trying to get to the bottom. You're trying to get the bottom to the top. As Motley Crue said, take me to the top. So anybody who's working backstage who says, meh, it doesn't matter, it's only the bottom of the card, I agree with Jon Moxley. You're done. Now, I would never suggest violence and pistol whipping somebody like Jon Moxley has. I'm being a facetious dick right now because if Bully Ray ever said that, the dirt sheets would run with, oh my God, Bully Ray suggests that somebody be pistol whipped. But they should be let go because you're not doing a justice to your talent. You're not thinking in the best interest of the talent. You're not thinking about how to get talent over. Then I ask myself, well, who there has the type of experience with getting talent over? Who works there that has worked in any major company before that knows what it takes to get guys and gals from the bottom of the card to the top of the card?
And they have a lot of people who are working there currently, Bully, with the experience to be able to do that. Are they given the opportunities to do that? I don't know. But there are people there. Not as much as there used to be, but there are still people there. Because like the Mark Henry is no longer there. Arn Anderson is no longer there. People that were there at some point.
Think about this. Think about having the mind of Arn Anderson and not tapping into it. Think about having the talent and the experience of Mark Henry and not tapping into it. Think about all of these people that spent time under the learning trees of the Vince McMahons and the Pat Pattersons of the world and not tapping into it. But you're tapping into the minds of these other folks, these podcasters, these internet dirt sheets who tell you everything that you want to hear. How's that working out for you?
It's not. It's
At
not
all.
working out. It's not working out, Bully. And I feel like when I hear those words, and this is coming from Jon Moxley, this isn't coming from us. This is coming from somebody who works there and is right now the top guy because he's your champion. When he's saying that there is somebody in the back that's talking about certain people that are going to be on their show that they're not putting too much attention to because it's the bottom of the card, who cares? Well, then that's also telling you that segments on your TV show doesn't mean shit. Doesn't mean anything. That there's segments on your show that you really don't care about because it's not reflecting the top of the card or your main eventer or your champion. Everything that's going on your show should matter. Everything. Now,
Dave,
as you go ahead, Bully.
I'm sorry. This question just popped into my head as you were talking. One segment versus one segment right now. If the WWE had to put one segment on television at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, and AEW had to put on one segment at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, tell me the AEW performers that you would put on TV at this very second to try to combat anything a WWE performer was doing right now.
Right now would probably be the BCC, including Jon Moxley as your champion.
You think that the BCC? I'm saying, do you think the BCC could go head to head with a Bloodline segment?
No, but I think it's their best shot.
Okay, fair enough. I'm just curious to hear that. It's there. We have some more comments from Moxley, right?
I think that might have been it. I think that
was it. Okay,
I believe so.
So I believe that John, in his comments, is showing us bigger picture issues within the company. If you have one person who's saying, it's only, they're lower on the card, they don't matter, what's to say that that's not going on within the entire company? What's to say that that's not going on at the top of the company? There are so many talents in AEW that are just taking up space and time that don't matter. And even the people that are supposed to matter aren't mattering with the fan base anymore. The fan base is dwindling in rapid numbers. Yes, AEW just secured a $185 million a year deal. That's awesome. Great. Congratulations. At the end of the day, it's about business and earning money. But when do you stop? When do you stop patting yourself on the back for that and start looking at the arenas, the houses, the ratings, and all of the numbers that are indicative of viewership going down?
Well, and there's plenty of examples of it, but who's the wrestler that you just met in Canada at Scott D'Amore's show that you absolutely fell in love with and think is extremely entertaining?
Harley Cameron.
All right, so you have Harley Cameron, who I agree is uber talented, has a tremendous upside, very entertaining. You started a story with Thunder Rosa on Collision on Saturdays. In 2 weeks, it's done. It's over. Why? You have Thunder Rosa, who's a former AEW Women's Champion, who brings you the credibility of being a former champion on this roster. And then you have somebody that is just starting out, highly entertaining. Why don't you see where you could go with that? Why are you blowing through the story, Bully, in 2 weeks? They had the blow-off match, and where does it go from there?
The reason why is because Tony doesn't care about it. Tony not caring is the same thing about because. Vince not caring was because. Bully, why did they put this on TV? Because Vince didn't care. Just throw it out there. You have to understand what the motivation is behind anybody to understand how they act. If Dave, if you had to write down on a piece of paper, if somebody asked you, what are Tony Khan's motivators when it comes to AEW? What would you write down? What would your answers be?
I have to be honest and say 5-star matches.
Anything else?
I would have to think about having a bigger presence on television, and the only thing I could definitively say, 5-star matches justified. This is awesome. Chance. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong, and that is the issue. The motivation of ownership, the motivation of the matchmaker, is 5-star matches. That just sounds ridiculous. I don't know of any other booker, promoter, matchmaker, whatever, guy at the top with the pencil whose motivation was a 5-star match or a "this is awesome" chant or winning an award that does absolutely nothing more than inflate your ego.
I gotta say this, Bully, and I know this kind of goes against like what we do because this is, sports talk radio. It's pro wrestling talk radio. So we love getting audio from like a Jon Moxley saying these things because it gives us something to talk about. But do you like to hear this? Seriously? This is Jon Moxley. I think you would say Bully is one of, if not one of the biggest star in AEW, right? He's your world champion. In a lot of ways, I have said from day one that Jon Moxley should be the face of AEW. He's kind of that poster child of the disgruntled former WWE employee that now went on to AEW, who's doing great things. I think he's definitely accomplished a lot. But let me just throw this out there.
Jon Moxley, just a lot of people might not get this analogy, but for those who do, Jon Moxley is the Onita of AEW.
Okay. So he is the guy. He's the man. He is the one that the fans want to rally around, right? He's the guy that if there's anybody on this roster to get the fan base to rally around him, it's Jon Moxley, right?
And remember back in the day when Onita did his post-match promos, what did people do? They rushed the ring and they actually physically rallied around Onita. So yes, rallying around is the correct term.
Do you really want that guy to be talking in any negative way about the company like he did to the New York Post?
I don't think he was talking negatively. I think he was talking honestly. I think that this is something that a guy like Jon Moxley has to do because maybe this wakes Tony Khan up. And you know what? Let's not say wake Tony Khan up. I don't want to insinuate that Tony Khan is asleep at the wheel. Maybe this helps Tony Khan to see things from a different perspective. Maybe instead of just booking dream matches, you can try to book a dream story or book dream characters or use the people at your disposal who understand how to do that in a better way.
All right. So then by you telling me that, Bully, that means that one of two things. That either Jon Moxley can't talk to Tony Khan or doesn't talk to Tony Khan.
I don't believe that. I think that there are people there who have an extremely open door policy with Tony. I believe that there are people there who have Tony's ear And yes, do you remember the scene in White Man Can't Jump when Wesley Snipes is making fun of Woody Harrelson about being able to hear Jimi Hendrix? The difference between hearing Jimi Hendrix and listening to Jimi Hendrix. Remember that?
Yes.
So yes, I believe that that Tony Khan is hearing certain talents, but I don't believe he's listening.
And I would use this as an example because I can only use myself as an example. If you're doing an interview on whatever, you're on 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff, right? And Eric Bischoff asks you, you know what, Bully? You're hosting Busted Open in the mornings, Busted Open After Dark. How's everything going over there? You know, Eric, everything's good, but I got to tell you, Busted Open After Dark on Monday, I don't get it. I don't know why. The Saturday show, I don't. Like, if I heard that, I would call you up. I'd be like, Bully, what the fuck, man? Like, if you got a problem with anything that's going on, you come to me and talk to me. Don't say that shit in public. Because
so you're actually upset that Moxley made these comments.
I am. Because to me, it's like, if you got a problem, then you come to me and say it. Because you're not just hurting me, you're hurting yourself. You represent this show. You're a part of this show. You're a lifeblood on this show. So when you go out publicly, even if it's on a small scale, and start talking negative about it, you're hurting yourself because you're hurting the whole brand. It's the same thing here. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. But I would also say that something brought Moxley to this point.
I hope so. Because you just said it. Tony Khan has a very open door policy. He has a very
with certain
good
talents.
All right. And I would think
a lot of talents are completely cut off.
All right, but would you think that Jon Moxley would be one of them? He's your top guy. He's your champion.
I think Jon Moxley can walk right past that big, scary, intimidating security guard that stands outside of Tony Khan's office, yes.
So, can you have the conversation with Tony Khan and not go public with it?
Maybe he has, and it's falling on deaf ears. That's why he needed to go public. And the deaf ears thing, I say because this seems to be a running theme with a lot of AEW talents.
Or maybe, Bully, that person he's talking about didn't get fired. Maybe that person that he's talking about is still employed by AEW, and he's like, what the fuck? I just called this guy out for publicly saying in front of other employees that it really doesn't matter because it's the bottom of the card, and this guy still works here.
The way Vince McMahon built, we're not talking about Vince McMahon personally now or his personal issues. We're talking about the businessman of Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon built that empire in a way where he had people who were successful at this industry, people who were great minds in this industry, people that were great talents in this industry working underneath him to make the next generation of great talents. When you look at all of the names that Vince had working underneath him, helping to build, back in the day, our producers and our agents were guys that were very successful in the business. So I can never tell AEW what to do or Tony Khan what to do. I'm the last person that they will ever listen to, although I should be one of the first people that they may want to listen to.
Well, why aren't they listening to me? I'm a fan.
I'm a fan. But no. I'm a fan too.
No, but I'm saying, but you're the professional wrestler. You're outspoken. You're controversial. Whatever label people want to put on you because it's lazy. All right, but I'm the fan. I'm the guy who went to All In. I'm the guy who's on to all the All Outs. I'm the one who went to Double or Nothing in Vegas. I'm the first person that went through that gate in Jacksonville after COVID. I'm the one that opened door policy for Tony Khan to come on this show every single week. I'm not being listened to.
Dave, you're a phenomenal example of the fan of AEW. Dave, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot here, but if I am, just shut me down. Didn't a good friend of yours who's a massive AEW fan tell you that he's disinterested now?
But Bully, he called into the show on Friday with Sam and I.
Oh, well then good. I'm not putting you on Front Street.
He called into the show. He was a lapsed wrestling fan. He was a big fan of territories, huge fan of ECW. When ECW went away, he stopped watching. And AEW got him back in. And I'm not lying. This fucking guy, every time I saw him, AEW hat on. AEW pullover, AEW jacket, hoodie, T-shirts. The guy watched all 3 shows religiously. He called me up Thursday morning when I was driving back home from South Philadelphia. He said, I'm done. I'm done. That's it. And he called in on the show Friday saying the same thing.
We have been having a discussion amongst me, you, and Paul, producer Paul, for over a year now. And I think Paul has tried to do his best to defend AEW's declining numbers in talking about, like, you know, the streaming services. People are getting away from cable streaming. Yes, I get that. I do believe there is a percentage of people that, but not in the way AEW is losing viewers. And the viewers that are still watching, they're still going, I don't care about ratings. As long as I'm getting a good show, that's awesome. I'm glad you like the product. Our job on this show is to talk about all aspects of the wrestling business. And when the WWE was doing poorly, my God, did we destroy Monday Night Raw on a weekly basis, telling you how we fell. Dave, how many times did you fall asleep last night? Twice. What about you, Bully? 3 times. We would talk about how many times we fell asleep. But the one thing that the WWE had going for them is history taught us that if anybody knew how to get themselves out of the valley, it was Vince McMahon, because he had done it so many times before.
But there is that side of it, but also there's no Vince McMahon now. So, like, Vince McMahon at some point, I think, did lose touch with the wrestling audience. He lost touch. And he didn't have Pat Patterson anymore, which was his right-hand man. And now it's Triple H. Go back to the New York Yankees. George Steinbrenner couldn't do it anymore. He had to refocus the entire New York Yankee franchise in order to be successful again. I think we may be at that point with AEW.